The hospital bill stared back at Chloe Bennett like a verdict she wasn't ready to accept. $75,000. For her mother's surgery. A number so large it felt impossible. She sank onto the worn leather couch of their small apartment, cradling her head in her hands. Her mother, Margaret, had always been her rock, her constant. And now, frail and coughing in the next room, Margaret was relying on her to pull off a miracle. "I'll figure something out, Mom," Chloe whispered, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I promise." Her phone buzzed. Another rejection email. Another "we're sorry, but you're not qualified." Chloe's chest tightened. Every second felt like a countdown toward failure, and she couldn't fail. Not when her mother's life depended on it. That was when she saw the ad. High-paying executive assistant position. Discreet work for a private entrepreneur. Immediate start. Travel required. Her brow furrowed. Discreet work? Travel? She scrolled, heart pounding. The salary listed could cover Margaret's surgery 3 times over. She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. But then the address caught her eye. Downtown in one of the tallest glass towers in the city. She had no idea who this billionaire was, but the desperation in her chest roared louder than her fear. Chloe didn't hesitate. She had no choice. Her heart raced as she grabbed her jacket and ran to the cab waiting outside. She didn't notice the rain that had started to fall, soaking the streets in gray melancholy. All that mattered was that she had to make it. As the taxi pulled into the towering black and gold skyscraper, Chloe's nerves tightened further. The elevator ride felt like hours, each ding of the floor marker echoing like a drumbeat in her chest. And when the doors finally opened, she found herself in an office that screamed power, wealth, and danger. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave her a dizzying view of the city below, and a man sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his presence magnetic and intimidating. Ethan Blackwood. He was taller than she expected, with sharp features, dark hair falling just slightly into his eyes, and a gaze that seemed to cut straight through her. There was something dangerous about him, something that made her stomach both churn and flutter. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "I hear you're in need of a very particular kind of job." Chloe swallowed hard, unsure if he was reading her desperation or if she was just projecting. "Yes," she said simply. My mother. She needs surgery and I can't afford it. I'll do anything." Ethan leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. A faint smile played at the corners of his lips. "Anything, you say?" A shiver ran down Chloe's spine. There was an intensity in his gaze, the kind that made her pulse quicken in more ways than one. She wanted to flee, and yet she couldn't. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love? Comment below. I want to hear your story. Welcome to MG's Love Stories, where passion burns, hearts break, and you can't stop watching. Don't just listen. Feel it. Like this story? Share, subscribe, and let's dive in. Ethan rose from his desk, moving closer, and Chloe felt an almost magnetic pull. He stopped a foot away, towering over her, and his voice lowered. "Good. You'll need courage, discretion, and a willingness to do things most people wouldn't even dream of. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Chloe swallowed, nodding. "I don't have a choice. I have to do this." He regarded her for a long, tense moment, and then, with a slow, deliberate motion, handed her a sleek envelope. "Sign this. Tomorrow you start." Chloe took it, trembling, her heart hammering. She was stepping into a world she didn't understand, a world full of danger, mystery, and temptation. And as she left the tower, the rain pouring down around her, Chloe knew one thing for certain. Nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The next morning, Chloe arrived at the Blackwood estate, a sleek, modern mansion perched on the edge of the city like a fortress. Her nerves prickled with every step she took toward the front doors, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. The receptionist barely glanced at her, gesturing toward the elevator. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now." Chloe's pulse quickened. "He knows I'm coming." She pushed the thought aside and stepped into the elevator, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation. When the doors opened, She found herself in an office more imposing than yesterday's. Dark wood, leather chairs, and abstract art that seemed to observe her with cold precision. And there he was, Ethan Blackwood, leaning casually against his desk, but every inch of him radiated authority. "You made it," he said, voice low, almost a purr, sending a shiver down her spine. "Impressive." Chloe swallowed, trying to appear confident. "I said I'd do anything." Ethan's eyes narrowed, studying her. "Anything is a strong word. Are you really prepared for that? The work is unconventional, sometimes morally gray, dangerous." "I don't care," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with steel. "I need this." A faint, almost amused smile curved Ethan's lips. "Good, you're honest. I like that." He walked around his desk, and Chloe felt the air shift. The space between them was charged, almost electric. Her heartbeat quickened, and for a moment, she forgot why she was even there. "Before you start," he said, placing a sleek tablet on the desk, "there are some things you need to know. This job isn't just about typing reports or running errands. You'll be involved in negotiations, sometimes delicate situations. You'll need to keep secrets, follow instructions exactly, and trust me." Chloe nodded, feeling both intimidated and strangely drawn to him. Trust him? She barely knew him, but there was something magnetic about his presence. Dangerous and irresistible. Ethan handed her a folder. "Sign here, here, and here. Your salary will cover any medical expenses you have pending, including your mother's surgery. But failure is not an option." Chloe's hands shook as she signed the documents. This was more than a job. It was a lifeline. A lifeline she knew could drag her into darkness she wasn't prepared for. If you've ever had to take a risk for someone you love, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to follow this story all the way through. Ethan's gaze lingered on her, intense and unreadable. "Good. You start tomorrow. Vivian will show you around. She'll explain the basics. But remember, everything you see or hear stays here." "Understood." Chloe nodded, swallowing her nerves. "Understood." Chloe left the office with a sense of vertigo. She had stepped into a world of power, wealth, and shadows, and into the orbit of a man who made her blood race. She couldn't tell if it was fear, desire, or both. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of her encounter with Ethan. The subtle smirk, the way his gaze lingered a moment too long, the way he'd spoken as if he already knew she'd accept the job. She felt herself trembling, not just with anxiety, but with a dangerous curiosity she hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow, she reminded herself, would be the start of something that could save her mother's life, or destroy her. Chloe stepped into the Blackwood estate the next morning, a notebook clutched in her hand and a carefully practiced calm in her chest. Vivian Blackwood met her in the foyer, a woman with icy eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "You must be Chloe," Vivian said, voice silk over steel. "I'll be showing you around. And just so you know, Mr. Blackwood expects perfection. Mistakes aren't tolerated." Chloe nodded, biting back a retort. She didn't have time for intimidation, not when Margaret's surgery hung over her like a guillotine. The first task was simple on paper: organize a set of confidential files, schedule meetings, and accompany Ethan to a high-profile dinner. But the moment she stepped into Ethan's presence, the air changed. He was magnetic in a way that made her pulse quicken, a mixture of charm, danger, and authority. "Good morning, Chloe," he said, his gaze lingering just a second too long on her. "Are you ready for your first challenge?" Chloe swallowed. "Yes." Ethan handed her a small envelope. "Deliver this to a Mr. Callahan. Do not open it. Do not show it to anyone. And be careful." Chloe glanced at the address. It was downtown, in a part of the city she knew only from news reports, the kind of streets whispered about in warnings to stay away from. Her stomach nodded. I can do this." "You can?" Ethan said, voice softening just enough to send a thrill through her chest. "But remember, discretion is key. One slip, and it's not just your reputation at risk." Walking into the city streets, envelope clutched like a lifeline. Chloe felt the weight of danger pressing down on her. Shadows seemed longer, footsteps echoed too loudly, and every glance from strangers made her heart jump. She reminded herself, "This is for Mom. Every risk is worth it." When she reached the destination, a dilapidated warehouse, a man with a scarred face opened the door. He glanced at the envelope and nodded, taking it silently. Chloe exhaled, relief flooding through her, but it was short-lived. She sensed eyes on her, a whisper of movement in the shadows. Her pulse raced. Back at the estate, Ethan was waiting. He didn't speak at first, just watched her. Eyes dark and unreadable. "You did well," he finally said, voice low. "But this was only a taste. The real challenges are coming." Chloe nodded, her body buzzing with adrenaline. But beneath the thrill, an uncomfortable awareness gnawed at her. This world was dangerous, and she was playing with fire. Over the next few days, her assignments grew darker. She witnessed deals made in shadows, secrets exchanged in hushed tones, and situations that tested her morality. Every task she completed felt like a small victory, but also a tiny compromise of the person she used to be. And through it all, Ethan was there, always watching, always nearby. There were moments that made Chloe forget herself. The way his hand brushed hers when passing a document, the sharp intakes of breath when she held his gaze too long, the quiet laughter that softened the edges of his dangerous aura. One evening, after an exhausting day, Chloe found herself alone in the estate's library. Ethan appeared without warning, leaning against the doorway. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said. "You need to rest." "I can't," Chloe whispered, voice tight. "Every second counts for my mother." He stepped closer, and for a moment, the danger that had always been between them blurred with something else. Desire, longing, a pull neither of them could deny. Chloe's breath caught when his fingers brushed hers as he handed her a folder. "Careful," he murmured, his voice low and rough. "You're tempting fate." Chloe's heart raced, but she refused to give in. "I can't. I have a mission." Yet, that night, lying in bed, Chloe's thoughts betrayed her. Ethan's gaze haunted her. The thrill of danger, the brush of his fingers, the intensity of his attention. It all pulled at something deep within her. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, share this story with someone who loves suspense and romance. Trust me, the ride's just getting started. By the end of the week, Chloe realized something terrifying. She was starting to care, not just about completing the job or saving her mother, but about Ethan. Every glance, every touch, every dangerous smile made her blood burn and her resolve weaken. And she knew the truth. The job was no longer just about money. It was about survival, and something far more dangerous. Love in the shadows of crime and secrets. The storm outside mirrored Chloe's inner chaos. Rain pelted the windows of the Blackwood estate, drumming like the pulse of the city itself. Chloe had been sent on a last-minute task: deliver sensitive documents to a client in a notoriously dangerous part of town. On paper, it seemed simple, but the streets whispered a different story. Her cab had broken down halfway there, leaving her stranded in an alley where shadows moved too quickly and voices sounded like threats. Chloe's breath caught in her throat as a group of men emerged from the darkness, their intentions clear before they even spoke. "Hand it over," one growled, eyes glinting with malice. Chloe's heart hammered. She clutched the folder, shaking. "This is it. Mom's surgery depends on this, and I can't fail." Before she could react, a sleek black car skidded to a stop, and the figure of Ethan Blackwood emerged, moving with lethal precision. He took the men down with swift, controlled force, his dark coat flaring around him like a shadow of authority. Chloe froze, mesmerized and terrified. When the danger finally passed, Ethan grabbed her hand, pulling her close. The electricity between them was undeniable, a dangerous flame neither could ignore. "Are you insane?" he demanded, voice tight, but his gaze softened just enough to show concern. "I had no choice," Chloe whispered, chest heaving. "It was for my mother." Ethan studied her, his hands still gripping hers. "You could have died," he murmured, and for a moment, the dangerous mask he always wore slipped. "Do you understand how much I just risked for you?" Chloe's pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the intensity of his presence. I know. Thank you," she said, voice trembling. He leaned closer, and the air between them ignited. His dark eyes searched hers, and Chloe felt a pull she couldn't resist. "This is wrong. It's dangerous. But Before she could think, he brushed a strand of hair from her face, fingers lingering longer than necessary. "Chloe," he whispered, voice low and intimate. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." Her breath caught, body alive with a mixture of fear and longing. I don't." He silenced her with a kiss, brief but searing, the kind that left her shaking. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling. "You're reckless, and I can't." "Don't," she interrupted, a shaky laugh escaping her. "Don't what?" "Don't make me care," he admitted, voice rough with emotion. "Because I already do. And if I let myself, I'd do anything to keep you safe, even if it destroys everything I've built." Chloe's chest tightened. She had been so focused on her mission, her mother's life, that she hadn't considered the possibility of this. Falling for Ethan Blackwood was dangerous, intoxicating, and possibly fatal, but it was happening anyway. They stayed like that for a long moment, suspended between danger and desire. Finally, Ethan stepped back, the cool mask of the billionaire returning. "You need to be careful. Every move you make matters. Not just for you, but for your mother, and for me." Chloe nodded, torn between gratitude, fear, and an overwhelming need that refused to be ignored. "I'll be careful," she promised, though she didn't know if she could keep that promise. Over the next few days, the tension escalated. Chloe found herself drawn into Ethan's world more than she anticipated. She witnessed negotiations that skirted legal boundaries, secrets exchanged in whispers, and the darker side of the empire she had volunteered to serve. Every encounter with Ethan became a mix of professional necessity and personal temptation. And then came the confession, though not yet. Chloe couldn't deny her feelings any longer. One evening, alone in the estate study, she finally spoke. I can't stop thinking about you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even when I try, even when I know this is dangerous." Ethan, who had been quietly observing her from the doorway, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable, then softened. "Dangerous, yes, and yet here we are," he said, a small, ironic smile tugging at his lips. "You feel it too, don't you?" Chloe swallowed, heat flooding her cheeks. "Yes." The silence stretched, charged and intimate. Then he closed the distance between them again, capturing her lips in a kiss that was longer, more demanding than before. This time, Chloe didn't resist. Every nerve in her body screamed, every fear and caution momentarily forgotten. When they finally broke apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "You're mine," he murmured, "and I'll protect you, no matter the cost." Chloe felt a shiver run down her spine. He means it, but what does it cost us? The next morning, the reality of their world came crashing back. Chloe received a message that shook her to her core. Someone close to her had leaked information to one of Ethan's enemies. The betrayal was personal and dangerous, threatening everything she had risked so far. Torn between her loyalty to her mother, her growing feelings for Ethan, and the lurking threat of betrayal, Chloe realized the stakes had never been higher. Every decision could lead to salvation or disaster. Chloe thought she was prepared for Ethan's world, but she wasn't ready for this. It started with a quiet morning in the Blackwood estate. She arrived at the office to find Ethan pacing, his jaw tight, eyes sharp. Vivian lingered nearby, an expression of cold calculation that Chloe had long learned to fear. "Something's wrong," Ethan said without preamble, voice low but tense. "Information from your last assignment leaked. Someone close to you, or me, has betrayed us." Chloe froze. Her mind raced. No, it can't be. She thought of every person she trusted, every step she had taken. Her mother? No. Her friends? No one else knew. Ethan's gaze softened slightly when it fell on her, but the tension didn't leave his body. Chloe, I need you to be honest with me. Did anyone pressure you? Force your hand? Give anything away? Shaking her head, she whispered, I don't understand. I didn't tell anyone. I swear. Ethan's hand brushed hers briefly, comforting, yet electrifying in a way that left her breathless. Then it's someone else, and we need to find them before it's too late. Days passed, and Chloe was swept deeper into danger. Confidential meetings with shadowy figures, late-night missions, and whispered threats made every step feel like walking a tightrope. The betrayal wasn't just a leak. It was a threat to her mother's life, to Ethan's empire, and to everything Chloe had fought for. And then the truth hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan Blackwood. Chloe had always sensed the assistant's mistrust, her icy demeanor and subtle comments. But she hadn't imagined that the woman she had barely spoken to could have engineered a betrayal so personal, so calculated. Evidence appeared, messages Vivian had sent to one of Ethan's rivals, information about Chloe's mother's surgery, details of Chloe's movements. Ethan confronted Vivian in his office, and Chloe watched from the doorway, heart in her throat. You've endangered her? And me? Ethan's voice was sharp, controlled, but there was an edge of fury that made Chloe's pulse race. Vivian's lips curled into a sly smirk. She's just a pawn. You think you can control everything, Ethan? Some risks aren't yours to manage. The tension between Ethan and Vivian was palpable, dangerous, like lightning ready to strike. Chloe felt frozen, caught between fear and fascination. This is bigger than I imagined. Later, Ethan turned to Chloe, eyes dark but soft. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but you have to trust me. We'll fix this. I won't let anyone hurt you or your mother. Chloe swallowed, emotions raw. She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle it herself, but the truth was undeniable. She needed him, not just for the money, not just for the safety, but because despite everything, she cared for him deeply. If you're feeling the tension as much as Chloe is, hit that like button and comment. Who do you think can be trusted in dangerous situations like this? The revelation left Chloe shaken. Betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was tangible, personal, and dangerous. She realized that survival meant more than completing tasks or earning money. It meant choosing who to trust, risking her heart, and facing a world where every move could be a trap. By the end of the week, Chloe and Ethan had formulated a plan. They would confront Vivian, reclaim the stolen information, and protect everyone she loved. It was risky, bordering on reckless, but it was the only choice. As they stood together, strategizing in Ethan's office, their hands brushed. The electric connection between them flared again. Chloe felt a shiver, part fear, part desire. She knew she was falling, completely, for a man who could destroy her, and maybe the only person who could save her mother. The storm of betrayal, danger, and attraction had reached its peak. There was no turning back. The night was heavy with tension, the kind that wrapped around Chloe like a cloak. She stood at the edge of the city's skyline, the wind whipping her hair, her hands trembling as she held the documents that could save her mother or destroy everything. Ethan stood beside her, calm but alert, a dark silhouette against the city lights. Are you sure about this? He asked, his voice steady, but there was an underlying edge, concern, worry, and something unspoken. Chloe nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. I have to do this. For Mom. For everything she's done for me. He studied her, then reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle but electric. You're incredible, he murmured, and for a moment, Chloe allowed herself to be human, to feel the warmth of his gaze and the undeniable pull between them. The plan was risky. They would confront Vivian and her allies, reclaim the stolen information, and protect Chloe's mother at all costs. Every step was precise, calculated, but danger still loomed at every corner. By the time they reached the location, a deserted warehouse where Vivian had holed up, Chloe's heart was pounding. Shadows shifted in the corners, and for a moment, panic surged through her. But Ethan's hand on hers grounded her, steadying her nerves. "You're not alone," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." The confrontation was swift and tense. Vivian, realizing she had underestimated both Chloe and Ethan, faltered. Threats were made, secrets revealed, and in the chaos, Chloe saw an opportunity. With a burst of courage, she retrieved the critical files and secured the evidence needed to protect her mother and expose Vivian's betrayal. When the dust settled, Chloe was breathless, her body aching from adrenaline and fear. But she was victorious. She had saved her mother. She had survived Ethan's dangerous world. And she had proven, most importantly to herself, that she could face impossible odds. Ethan turned to her then, eyes dark and intense. "You were amazing," he said, voice low, reverent. "I don't just respect you, I care about you. More than I should, perhaps. But it's true." Chloe felt tears prick at her eyes. The relief, the fear, the adrenaline, they all merged into something overwhelming. "I care about you too," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Even though I know it's dangerous." He stepped closer, the world narrowing to just the two of them. "Dangerous?" he echoed, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "But I'll take the risk. For you." And then, finally, they kissed long, slow, full of all the longing, fear, and passion that had built between them. It was more than desire. It was relief, gratitude, and the beginning of something neither had expected, but both had been waiting for. Back at her apartment, Chloe saw her mother recovering peacefully, the surgery a success thanks to her determination and the risks she had taken. Margaret reached for her hand, eyes shining. "You saved my life, Chloe. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Chloe said softly, smiling through tears. "I just had to." Later, in the quiet of the estate, Chloe and Ethan stood together on the balcony, overlooking the city. The danger hadn't disappeared. Ethan's enemies were still out there. But for the first time, Chloe felt a sense of peace. Love, she realized, could bloom even in the darkest shadows. If you felt Chloe and Ethan's journey, the suspense, the love, the sacrifice, hit that like button, share this story with someone who loves a thrill, and subscribe for more MG's love stories. Comment below. Would you risk everything for someone you love? Ethan's hand found hers again, fingers intertwining effortlessly. "You're mine," he murmured, echoing his earlier promise. "And I'll protect you, always." Chloe smiled, leaning into him. "And I'll face anything, as long as I have you and Mom." The storm had passed. Danger still lingered on the horizon, but Chloe knew one thing for certain. She had fought for her family, discovered a love that burned brighter than fear, and survived a world that could have destroyed her. And she knew she would never be the same again.